And when you feel like you're immersed in something, you feel like you're trapped, or it's just that feeling of hopelessness.
If you know you have a lot of things coming up and you're trying to figure out a way to get them all done, it's also important to think about time management and prioritization and chunking tasks into smaller bits and pieces so that they're more manageable.
So if you create a list, well, don't forget to check off the things that you've done and then recognizing, hey, look what I did accomplish.
Welcome back to Wellness Wednesday. My name is Beth Gustin, a licensed professional counselor here in Colorado, with my co-host, Robin Ennis, a licensed clinical social worker. And we are back. We have a lot of topics in mind here, but we thought we would talk about overwhelm this time. It's a theme we've both been kind of experiencing ourselves, and in my case, hearing from some clients across the board. And we thought it would be something worth bringing up because if we're feeling it, you might be feeling it too. And so I think it's important to talk about what overwhelm is and what might cause it, and then hopefully some coping strategies on how to deal with it.
Right, exactly. Not only knowing what it is, but how you can recognize it in terms of physical symptoms, like the theme has been throughout our podcast, how to be more in tune with yourself. And around this time, there can be, various reasons why people feel overwhelmed. So we'll talk about the top reasons that we've noticed within our caseload to be able to help you understand that, whatever you're going through, you're not alone. So if it's a constellation, knowing that other people are experiencing similar challenges as you and how to be able to overcome those challenges.
Yeah, and I think it's important to kind of know what are your signs that you're overwhelmed. And in most cases, we don't always know we're overwhelmed until we snap at someone, or we notice that our hair is falling out in greater clumps than normal, or we just don't notice. It kind of sneaks up on you sometimes. And so I think the more we can pay attention to our bodies and to our mental load, if you will, then we can better kind of ward off overwhelm.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect way to define what is being overwhelmed. And I feel like it's exhaustion, both physically and mentally, where you're beyond your capacity. You feel like the stressors in your life are becoming too much, where it's hard to manage. It's hard to find that balance in your life. And one illustration, and I actually did this with one of my clients, one illustration is thinking of a cup, right? And filling it with water. It's when you feel like the water is overflowing. You just don't know how to stop it, and it just keeps spilling over and over and over again to where it's impacting you and your relationship with other people.
Absolutely. And so I think it's important to think about, we all have a kind of our own threshold of when we hit, I can manage this to I'm overwhelmed. And so kind of knowing what that is. But I also think if you know you have a lot of things coming up and you're trying to figure out a way to get them all done, it's also important to think about time management and prioritization and chunking tasks into smaller bits and pieces so that they're more manageable, and employing all those strategies so that we can manage the overwhelm and not let it get the better of us.
It's really important to recognize the feelings when you start to feel them creep up versus you feeling like you're completely immersed in it. Because I found that with myself and other people on my caseload, that when you feel like you're immersed in something, you feel like you're trapped, or it's just that feeling of hopelessness and it's harder to get out of it. I also want to add too is that, so recognizing before you're fully immersed in it, but also to recognizing that when you are feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to seek, different tools or help. It doesn't mean that you're quote unquote weak. I've heard clients mention that of both genders. Yeah. And varying cultures, feeling like, okay, well, I can't handle this. So this means that I'm weaker than my family, or I'm weaker than so-and-so, that level of comparison.
The other thing I think is important to think about is when you get overwhelmed, how do you respond? So I tend to shut down and nothing gets done because I'm like, well, I'm just not going to do any of this done because I don't even know where to start. And I've heard that also echoed in a lot of my clients. They just kind of shut down and don't do anything for a bit. And that actually makes people typically feel worse because now they're just putting off all the many things they have to get done.
Right.
I think it's kind of knowing your response to overwhelm as well, so you can find a way to work with that and respond differently that's more healthy.
Right. And I want to add to that, Beth, when you mentioned shutting down, it made me think of a social worker that I offered clinical supervision to. She was in a meeting and she said that she just shut down and she felt it, but also too, her coworker saw it in her. So you may not realize it, but people may be in tune with how you're feeling and noticing those shifts in your personality. I think when you or somebody else notices the shift around you, then that's when you know that, hey, okay, I need to take a step back. What is going on? What is the situation causing me to feel this way? How long has it been happening? Is it a pattern? And what can I do differently so that I can start to feel better within myself? And I do like, Beth, how you said the goal setting. So really start small, right? Trying to find an achievable goal, whether it's time management or even allocating duties to people. I know that particularly amongst people where they're the caretaker, they may take on a lot more responsibility, which can cause them to feel overwhelmed. So it's okay to delegate those responsibilities to other people so that there, again, be a balance.
Yes, I think delegation is huge where you can. And when you can, I think deciding what is urgent and what is important, those are two different things. And so if things need to be done urgently, obviously that gets prioritized first. If it's important, it gets prioritized second. If it's something that's like, I'd be nice to do that, that's prioritized third. And I think about using a lot of mindfulness techniques here to kind of help us get through our overwhelmed period as well. Because if we can take a minute, and I know this involves time, but take a minute and do some paired breathing or do some 5-4-3-2-1 grounding. That's paired breathing is pairing a word you want to bring in more of into your body with your inhale and exhaling out a word you want to get rid of or have less of in your body. And 5-4-3-2-1 is naming 5 things that you can see if you have sight, 4 things you can touch, actually touch them, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. What you're doing with those examples of exercises is you're bringing your brain back to the present so that it can't run away with overwhelm and anxiety and hopelessness. And you're kind of forcing it to come back and stay present so that you can think more clearly and actually get something done. And there's a ton of techniques like that, but that's my go-tos.
Yeah, the 5-4-3-2-1, that's my favorite. That is definitely my go-to. One that I was going through a book of grounding techniques. And of course, I know the metaphor of a tree, right? Tree equals growth and strength. But I hadn't really thought about it in terms of a grounding technique. So they were saying to stand up and put your arms in the air and think of your arms as branches, right? That you're growing, and think of positive qualities within those branches. And that can help you stay grounded in the present by focusing on your feet hitting the ground and your arms spread out, as well as thinking positive, what you have to offer the world and how that equals strength and growth. So I thought that was a neat one. I haven't practiced it yet with my clients, but it sounded pretty cool.
I like it.
Yeah.
Is the book worth recommending to our listeners?
It is. I'll have to go through and figure out what, because I have a few books. And so I'll remember that for the next podcast. Maybe we can start it off with those book recommendations.
You know, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it might be a good future topic to do what books we recommend for others that might be.
Yeah,
give us a bit
like
to put that one together. But yes, the other thing I was thinking about with overwhelm is having some self-compassion for yourself, because everyone experiences this, and we are really good at having that negative self-talk loop start when we're not feeling like we're accomplishing things. So whether it's shifting it so you can do a little mini gratitude exercise, or you can write down a list of accomplishments that you've done for the day versus the to-do list for the next day. Things like that can help you gain perspective and help you stay more grounded and present focus and positive towards yourself and all the things you have to get done.
I agree. It focuses on the assets versus the deficits. Okay, this is what I accomplished today. Look how much I accomplished to reach whatever particular goal that you're trying to achieve. That's what I try to recommend to my clients. So if you create a list, well, don't forget to check off the things that you've done, and then recognizing, hey, look what I did accomplish today, even if you didn't get through your whole list. I feel like some common things for people to feel overwhelmed or stressed out about are feeling like you're not accomplishing enough, being hard on yourself in that way. Another thing that I feel like people are overwhelmed with around this time, people are getting settled in with school. So trying to find new routines or having to talk to teachers about behaviors or whatever it may be. Another stressor is thinking about, like we had talked about again, and I kind of alluded to it just now, is, wow, I don't feel like I am where I should be in terms of my life stage. I feel like I need to be further along. Well, think about why you feel that way and where that notion came from. Right? I think that we need to step back and not compare ourselves and really think of ourselves on a more individual basis. Another one that I've come across is, okay, so I'm the caretaker, or I'm the person that has a lot of responsibility within the family. Everything falls on my shoulders, and it's a lot. Family members, extended family members said they would be there to support, but they're not. So how can I best be able to do this when I have no support? So that can make people feel overwhelmed and stressed.
Other sources I think about too are things like if you're losing your sight, for example, you have an acquired disability, you have to learn how to do things differently. You have to learn all the tools, the apps, the technology, the braille, if that's where you're going. Learning all those things is overwhelming. I think about learning how to do rideshare and transportation when you can't drive anymore. That can be overwhelming. The grief journey that we go on whenever a loved one dies or we lose something very valuable and precious to us, that's overwhelming. So there are lots of sources of stress that can cause overwhelm. And positive things too. I think about weddings, birth of a child, retirement. Those things are really positive, but they also can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Any type of transition can have feelings of being overwhelmed. And so, Beth, as I was listening to you describe vision loss or acquired disability and learning the technology, I just want to add to that too. I know you've heard this as well, is going back to that level of comparison. So people who are at a training center and alongside other people who are learning those tools or techniques, and it can be overwhelmed, but also too feeling like, oh man, that person's further along than I am, or I'm not doing a good job. I'm not succeeding. So that can be a breeding place as well.
I'm thinking about myself personally here this week. I had to get a new router and had to get a new network set up, and I happened to have the Envision glasses and I couldn't get them to pair. So I couldn't get them back on Wi-Fi. And if you have those glasses, they're kind of not really much good without being on Wi-Fi or, a hotspot or something. And I had to get sighted help to resolve the problem, which was frustrating to me because I didn't want to have to do that. But thinking about when something breaks down or doesn't go as expected, I had both my printer at my office and my printer at my house also not cooperate because technology hates me this week is my theory. And I couldn't get the touch screen to be read out with the app that I had for whatever reason. And so I had to get help, and that's overwhelming. And so, I think, again, it can show up in a lot of different ways of our life and how we choose to handle it and how we choose to take steps to maintain our independence, maintain our sanity, maintain our self-compassion. All those things really impact how we cope with overwhelm. And this goes into a whole other topic, I think, about asking for help as well, because if we're overwhelmed and we know that asking for help would actually help us, but we don't want to have to ask for help, that also can feed into this kind of vicious cycle, I think, that can be experienced when it comes to overwhelm.
I think we were in each other's head, honestly, because I didn't want to go. I was thinking about help and my own helping behaviors. And I was like, no, Robin, that'll go down a whole different path. So I think that will be a great topic because that's my pitfall. And I tend to create situations to where I feel overwhelmed because I don't ask for help sometimes.
I wait too long to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I ask for help, I'm really grumpy with my helping person. And they're like, what did I do? I'm like, nothing. I just
right.
didn't want to have to ask you, okay?
I just reached that point. Yeah. And technology can do that. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a love-hate relationship.
Yes.
So, yes. I would say one thing that I try to do is, and I learned this from the executive director at my former work, is that every morning she would tell herself, it'll be okay. I don't know what the day will hold, but I know it'll be okay, right? Life challenges, they're not fun going through them, especially when it comes to technology in the moment, but you know that you'll make it through it eventually because you have in the past. So that tends to kind of help me feel less overwhelmed when I step back and say that.
Absolutely.
Well, Beth, is there anything else that you want to talk about in terms of feeling overwhelmed that we have?
Nope. I was just going to move towards winding down, ask you the same question. So I think we have exhausted the overwhelm topic for the episode.
I think we have too. So if anybody out there has, comments or experiences that you want to share with us about feeling overwhelmed and how you either got stuck or how you overcame those feelings, we definitely want to hear from you as always.
So until next time, stay grounded and take care.
Until next time, take care.
Oh yeah, Wellness Wednesday with Beth and Robin. Gonna settle it down. Oh yeah, get your feet planted on the ground.
For more more podcasts with the blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to leave us some feedback, give us a call at 612-367-6093. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.
Wellness and taking care of ourselves. It's all about you and taking care of yourself. Oh, yeah.
When we share
what we see through
each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited
expectations
and the reality
of blind abilities.
and the realities of blind abilities.